Hi, this is Myra with Boutique Paint. It's the beginning of August and we're going to work on fall. It's a little earlier than I normally do it, but since fall is just around the corner and I know a lot of people like to get decorating early, I thought I'd go ahead and start on fall. So today I'm doing a pillow, and this is the fabric that I have picked out for the pillow. It's a flannel, of course. And then I'm going to do this insert. Well, it's not really an insert, but it's going right on top. And I'm going to stamp that. And these are my samples. So what I did is I just took pieces of paper, and you could use a paper bag or whatever you got. This is a 12 by 12 sheet, and this is just a regular piece of typing paper. And I went ahead and stamped out some ideas of how I might want this to look. I decided to go ahead and go a little bit bigger. I did cut this to a 12 by 12, but I'm also going to need to turn this under a little bit to sew it. And this pillow doesn't have to be sewn, and I'll go over that too. But yeah, so it'll be a little bit under a 12 by 12. It'll be closer to an 11 by 11 by the time I'm done. But I just wanted to stamp out a couple ideas on paper ahead of time. I think I'm going closer to what I did here as far as a look. So we'll get started here. I'm going to move the stuff out of the way so that I can get to just this, because I don't want to stamp on top of this too. And this is just canvas cloth. You can use muslin, you can use, anything. Probably don't want super nubby, just because it's a little harder to stamp. And I'm going to use IOD's black ink, and we're going to start. Now I need to remember that there is going to be a seam here. So what I'm going to do, so that I don't go down too far, I think I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm just going to go up. Let's see, I'm actually probably just going to do like a 1/4 inch turn. So I'm going to go up and up, and I'm marking this with a disappearing ink pen. It's made for fabric, but it can be used on anything, and it will disappear in 12 to 24 hours. Sometimes, depending on what you're using it on, it can disappear a lot quicker. So that's basically where we're going to fold it, turn it. So I'm going to set my little pumpkin here for my mask. I'm just going to kind of center him a little bit. And then I'm going to take oops, that lid doesn't want to stay on there. I'm going to take my purple pen again, and I'm just going to kind of trace around it real quick. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. You just want to kind of know a general idea of where this little guy is going to go once you stamp him. And then I'm going to take my small pumpkin leaf. And the reason why I put the outline is because I want the leaf to come on the front of my pumpkin when I go to stamp it. So I'm going to stamp him first, but I wanted to know where I was going to place him. So we'll go ahead and give this a stamp or an inking. Now on stamping on fabric, this isn't going to be too bad because there's not a lot of raised in the fabric. But if you sometimes need to clean up these edges here, if it's a fabric that's maybe a little bit more raised, because those will stamp. These little lines will stamp on your fabric, and you don't want that. So I think I want this to go kind of like that. You want to push firmly. Just kind of move your hand around carefully, not to move the stamp. You can also stamp this out in color. I thought about that and I thought, no, I think I want to stick to just the black. So there's the first one. So then I'm going to I'm going to grab my pumpkin stamp. And I'm going to grab the mask for this guy and put that over the top. If I can get it to stay still without keep sticking to my fingers. Okay, so now we're gonna once again, just to make sure. And it doesn't have to go exactly where you marked. That was just kind of a guide so you'd know where you wanted to place your leaf. And there we go. And a lot of times your mask will go with your stamp when you go to lift it. So I'm going to put that aside. And next I want to do some leaves over on this side. So to make sure that I don't stamp onto my pumpkin, I'm going to put my pumpkin mask back down. And be careful, you may want to clean all of this as you go with some rubbing alcohol because it doesn't dry fast on the mask and you don't want to be getting ink every place else. So I think we'll go this way with the stamp. You know how pumpkins kind of, their leaves and their little tentacles go off to the side. I got a lot of ink, extra ink there, so I am going to take a baby wipe and just kind of clean that up because that's more than I want. Some of that's from when I was stamping my sample. So I'm going to go this direction, and it will go off of my square where I'm going to have it. That's okay. And you can check it. You can lift up one corner and make sure that your stamp is doing what you want it to do. And then I think I want another little guy this way. And we will do this. Now I've got ink on this. And if I flip it around, it will ink up everything. So I'm going to wipe it down with a baby wipe. Get that extra ink off. And even though that looks like there's still ink on this, it's pretty clean. You can also take it over to the sink and use a brush to kind of scrub the ink out of the insides of this and then let it dry. But because we're doing video and I don't have a sink out here, it's not really an option. So let's see, how do we want this one? No, I think I'm going to change my mind and I'm going to go back to this little one. So I'm going to grab this one again. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of do it. Let's see, how do we want it to look like that? Or maybe like that. So then, because I'm overlapping this, I'm going to want that mask again. And we're just going to put it on top. So we've got two masks going now. One on top of the other. And I'm going to ink it up. can't remember how I was going to have this. Think like that. Excellent. Alrighty, so now I'm going to pull these guys up. And that's how that part looks. So fall, you think of also sunflowers. So I thought I'd use the sunflower stamp. This is such a big stamp that I thought I would only use a small part of it, just kind of coming down in the corner here. Stamp this guy up. That's looking pretty. And then how about a couple apples over here coming down from the tree on this side. I don't have a backing for that, so I'm going to pull my leaves off of this. I'm going to put him on. And I'm going to kind of see how I want this to look. I think like that. Just kind of drop them down. I got this fabric is moving on me. I'm going to go a little bit over because until I drop it down, I don't know exactly where I'm putting it. And I don't want to miss a corner. So let's see. Just kind of play with it where you want it. I have just some butcher paper underneath this so that my overflow goes onto it. It absorbs it quickly so that it's less likely to mark up my fabric. And there's that guy. So that's pretty cute right there. Let's scoot this up because I don't want to scoot that on there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat set this. I'm going to let it sit for some time. They usually recommend letting it sit for 24 hours and then heat set. I haven't had problems with my heat setting if I do it like within 6 hours. It just lets the ink get a chance to absorb in there and set up. And so you're going to take your iron, you're going to heat set it, leaving it in place, no steam, for like 15 seconds on your cotton setting, and then move it over here. If you want, you can test it, test your fabric. It's always best to take a little sample piece and test your fabric to make sure you're not going to burn it or it's not too hot, and just set it on there. Don't move it. 15 seconds, lift it, come over here, and then do it again. I do it twice. So then I'm going to turn this corner and also iron it so it's in place. So this is the base fabric that I'm going to use. When I got it, it was cut at an angle at the fabric store, so I just opened it up and cut along this line. And that's the nice thing about something like this, is you've got a built-in line. And I cut this, it's 19 inches wide, so I have 1/2 inch seam allowances on each side. And then I'm using the fold at the top of the pillow, so I don't need any seam allowance there. So then I need another 1/2 inch seam allowance down here. So from the top to the bottom, it's 18.5. from side to side, I cut it 19 inches. If you're doing a 12 by 12 pillow, then you would want to do 13 inches and then a ½ inch at the bottom. If you choose to not use the fold at the top, just add an extra ½ inch. This could be done without sewing if you're not a sewer. It could be used, you could use, excuse me, they make a tape. It's a no-sew tape, and you basically press it. So you would press it in between the seams. So you would, what you would do is you'd flip this whole thing like you're going to sew it. Because you sew from the outside, and you're going to put your seam, this basically a webbing that is like glue, and you would put it right here, and you would iron it per the instructions, and then it would be glued together. But before you sew the pillow itself, you're going to need to take your insert and find the center and sew this on the top. So I sewed this on, and before I did, I really pinned it down good so that you didn't have any shifting. So I put pins in each corner, but then I also put them halfway. I have a little bit of little furries sticking out here, so just carefully go along and just trim those off. And then we're good to move on to the next step, which is flipping this in half with the wrong sides out, lining them up. And what I'm going to do on the bottom here, so on the bottom is where I'm going to have, we're going to stop sewing, and I'm going to put the pillow in, since the top of it up here is a fold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my sewing about 2 inches in. I'm going to sew along up into the fold. Same thing on this side. And then we will flip it inside out. And the reason why I'm coming in a little bit is because then it makes an automatic fold line that you can either sew with the machine once it's turned inside out and the pillow is inside of it. It just makes it a little easier. You can either sew it with the machine, or you can hand whip stitch it, either one, whatever you're, or you can use the seam tape again. So I'm starting in here a couple of inches on the bottom of the pillow, about a ½ inch seam allowance here. And like I said, we're going to go forward and we're going to stop. I'm going to reverse a little bit to reinforce that stitch, and then I'm going forward again. I'm going to get to the corner about a ½ inch in. I'm going to pivot with my needle in the fabric. And for those of you that sew, I realize that this is basic stuff, but there are a lot of people that don't sew, so I'd like to just help them along here. And then we're going to sew to the top of the pillow now. So we're done sewing, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the corners and I'm going to cut them at an angle. And I'm not going to go super close to the seam line. There's the seam line. I'm just going to cut it at an angle. What happens is when we flip this inside out, then this is going to fold, and it'll fold in, and it'll keep it less bulky on the inside. So we're going to do this on all 4 corners. This one's going to be less so just because there's not a seam. But I'm going to go ahead and just trim it a little bit. And this doesn't have to be at quite the same angle. All right, and then we're going to flip it inside out. And like I said, there's the reinforced stitch. So when you go to flip it, you put stress on that. And you can already see, even with the double, that the thread is wanting to pull a little bit. which means I didn't get all the way to that corner again. But it'll keep it from pulling a whole lot. So we're just going to flip this inside out. And then in these corners, we're just going to take our finger and kind of push so that that corner comes out. We're going to do that on all 4 corners. This. And the ones where, see, that's what it wants to do. So the ones where you have a lot of fabric, I'm going to trim this just a smidge more because it's not turning quite as easy as I want it to. So I'm just going to angle this a little bit more because I'm trying to stay away from that stitch line. And then it turns very nicely. So we'll do the same on this corner. I can find this corner. There he is. Right there in front of me. It's still a little bit. If you still have that problem, what you can do is 2 things. You can take a pin and you can just kind of grab it and pull it up. Or you can put something on the inside that's a little pokey, not too pokey, and just kind of work it. There we go. And then we are ready to put our pillow on the inside. And then what we'll do is we'll, like I said, stitch at the bottom here. I realized I had lined it up to this fold, and the fold was up here, so my my pillow is a little off center, but that's okay. That was my mistake. I should have trying to do it on a small surface is very difficult. Usually you want under normal circumstances I might do this on the floor or do it on the dining room table so I could get it where I needed it to be, but that's okay that it's a little low. We're just gonna go with it. So I will grab the pillow and we will stuff it. Okay, we've got the pillow and I'm going to go ahead and get it in here. But you can see now that this is sewed that we can just fold that super easy and sew it. I'm going to attempt to do this up here. But basically you want to take one corner and put it into one of the other corners of the case and just kind of do it then with the other one, slide it in there, then you can kind of grab it and shake it a little bit and pull down the rest. Go. And then I'm going to sew up the bottom of this and I'll show you the finished product. If you have any questions about any of the products shown in this video, you can go to our website at www.boutiquepaint.com, and I thank you for joining me. Bye.